Thank you for joining us for WJTS Inform. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Joining us in the studio, as he does every Friday whenever he can make it, that is State Senator Mark Messmer, to talk about what's happening in legislation, primarily what's happening within the House Senate for Indiana.
Yep.
Well, Senator, welcome to the show.
Great to be here as always. So we're early in session, but we had 20 bills that ran through the Senate this week and got final passage in the first half of session. You know, those will proceed over to the House and be dealt with, starting in March, on the second half of session. But we had some interesting bills passed this week, and I just want to hit a few of them to highlight some of the interesting, and we get some pretty interesting debate on the floor. Mm-hmm. So some of them that I thought were a little noteworthy, or at least might be interesting to folks. So one of the bills, and everything we passed this week was either unanimous or highly bipartisan. I mean no party line issues, which is really typical of everything we do. But some of them that I thought were interesting. One of the bills was not allowing a discrimination of if a person is going to get an organ transplant. Some medical doctors were not allowing organ transplants to go to people with physical or mental disabilities. And the folks who run the ARC programs around here, so eliminated that potential for discrimination against a handicapped person for being recipient of a organ donation. Okay. Passed unanimously, and people say, why do you have 150 or 200 bills that pass? I mean, that's one that you're just going into an existing code site and making an adjustment. So not a whole new category of law, and probably 90% of what we do, maybe even higher than that, is just technical corrections to existing statutes, and that was one. So
tweaking a bill, so to speak, or a law that's already in existence, because things do change.
They do.
And situations come up.
Yep. Society changes. Technology changes. Absolutely. Right. So that was one. Another one that I thought was very interesting, and the final person that came up to speak on the bill, I wanted to stand up and give a standing ovation, but that's not proper decorum in the Senate. It's requiring a civics exam to be taken, the same exact U.S. government civics test that people who want to become citizens have to take, and requiring, somewhere in grades 8 through 12, requiring students, to take that and get at least a 60% to be able to graduate. Now, I don't know if the House will move the bill or not, mm-hmm. but anybody can go online and take that exam for free anytime. It's a 100-question test, and I'm probably going to challenge myself when I get home this weekend to do it and just see how I do. But it's basics of how our government is set up, and I mean, one of the things that I hear as much as said wrongly as much as anything is people say, well, we live in a democracy, so we should be able to do fill in the blank. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a representative republic. A republic is a type of, democratic process. People are elected, through democratic processes, but a republic is significantly different than a democracy. A democracy is basically everything breaks down on majority rule. And that, as our founders of our country looked at civilizations throughout history, civilizations that were strictly mob rule, democracy. Pure democracy is the will of the majority over the will of the minority, and things go to hell, and pretty quickly in countries that have tried that. They're just not stable for very long. And so that's a very unique. And the lady who came up to speak last, when she was 18 years old, she immigrated to the United States from Yugoslavia. And she said, I grew up under communist oppression in a communist country. And she speaks very broken English still today. She's probably 45. But she gave the most impassioned, logical reason why we should expect all of our citizens to know what a person who wants to become a citizen, should know to become a U.S. citizen. And it was, it was absolutely, I mean, she got emotional in telling her history of why she came here and why she loves this country so much. It was just incredible.
So basically in high school, do we still have government class? It's been a long time since I've been in high school.
We do.
Okay.
But it could be I mean, it could be done during government class, U.S. history class. I mean, when you're a junior or senior, there's different, it doesn't mean you have to take set up a whole class on civics. I mean, it'd just be integrated into part of what you do. So I don't know if it'll pass the House or not.
No, but it brings up an interesting point for people to think about.
Absolutely.
Whether it passes or not, because I didn't know I could take that test. So I could go online and I can take that test to see how much I really know.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll take it, but I'm not going to tell anybody until
until you pass it.
Until I see if I pass. But it was very interesting. The debate was very passionate on both sides of the issue, and that was bipartisanly voted, and we had Democrats and Republicans who loved it and hated it, and I think that it ultimately broke down the people who didn't want it. Thought it was just one more mandate, for schools to have to try
burden
to deal with, and so I get that, but I mean really, what we should expect everybody to know about our country's founding principles, about how our government operates, would be a good idea.
Interesting.
So that was very interesting. Another one I didn't realize under driving under the influence. We have a level 5 and a level 4 felony if you're driving intoxicated and you have a crash and you kill somebody. And it was set up with a level 5 and a level 4 because prior to a few years back, if you were under 21, you got a level 5 conviction. If you were over 21, you got a level 4 conviction. But they took away the age barrier a few years back, so now you still had on the books for driving while intoxicated and killing a person in a wreck, you had a level 5 and a level 4 that were really no difference. And so they split that and said if it's methamphetamines, cocaine, some of the really hard drugs, and you are intoxicated with one of those, and they do it with a blood test, that would be a level 4, and then alcohol and whatever that currently is considered level 5. So here again, a cleanup of an existing law that was in the books, something got changed, ended up with a kind of a conflicting statute. So we come in and clean those up. Thought that was interesting. One that I had got contacted from our local, the lady who teaches speech pathology, whatever in the school system. There's different levels of certifications for teachers to teach children with speech disorders in the classroom. Just from a shortage of professionals that come out with the different education levels, but to have what they call emergency communication disorder permits for places where there's shortages of the actual speech pathologists versus people that have maybe occupational therapy where they teach there's different degrees of speech lessons taught in school and allowing kids to get their needs served in an area where maybe there's not enough of the PhD level speech pathologists. So that one I had been contacted by our local director of that agency had said, please support Senate Bill 189. So that one passed through unanimously. As most everything we do up there does. And one that didn't realize it was an ongoing practice, but some hospitals were requiring for doctors to get admitting privileges at a hospital. They were requiring doctors to go back every 5 years, some every 10 years, but 5 years has been, in some cases, doctors to go back and retake their medical board exam again. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer, and not every state, was requiring, or not every hospital, but they were requiring doctors to go back and retake their board exam again. And it doesn't mean we don't expect continuing education, because whether you're an engineer, lawyer, accountant, everybody continues to take, continuing education credits to make sure your skills stay sharp. And it doesn't mean we won't have specialty certifications and processes, but the Senate Bill 203 would eliminate the process of requiring doctors to get admitting privileges to take a maintenance of certification retake their board again. So, I'm not sure I'd want to go back and take my engineer license exam again, after 30 years, but doesn't mean I don't continue to take, continuing education 15 hours every year to keep up to date on technology and things that change over time. So,
now these are all bills that have passed the Senate, will now go to the House.
Correct.
And they've passed some, I'm sure, that will come to the Senate.
Yep.
And you'll start hearing those
the
later.
First week of March is when we'll start hearing the other chambers' bills. So we've got another full week of exciting bills to deal with next week. Some of them that I've heard comments coming out of committee hearings. Next week we'll have on the floor the industrial hemp bill. We'll have a bill that deals with work permits that 14 and 15-year-old students have to get before they can get a job. I had been contacted by Holiday World Wednesday prior to the Thursday hearing just to say, hey, this bill's coming and we'd appreciate your support. The work permit process requires guidance counselors to sign off on a permit for kids to be employed, and then if the kids' grades start to drop, they're supposed to call the employer and let them know it's causing grade problems and to fire the kid. And we've had a lot of teenagers that we've employed in my company. Never once have I ever heard of a follow-up from a guidance counselor. And the Holiday World folks said of the tens of thousands of students that they've dealt with in their 70-year history, they have never gotten one call. But it's a really complicated paperwork burden, to deal with,
for both the employer and the
student. Yeah.
Right.
And they talked about a student who came up from Evansville with their parents and thought they had everything filled out correctly and had one form maybe not stamped right from the guidance counselor. And so they said, sorry, we can't process your paperwork because this or that was not done technically to the I dotted and T crossed. And the parents just said, what the heck, let's just forget it. And then they never come back. And they deal with kids that come up from Kentucky. And so they have to have the Heritage Hills, they have to go to Heritage Hills school while they're in school to get their counselor to sign the work permit from a student from Kentucky to make the work permit legal. Now, how many times do you think the Heritage Hills guidance counselor has ever called a school in Kentucky to follow up on one of their students? Number one, they don't even know what their grades are.
So is this a bill that would eliminate that?
It just eliminate the work permit. It doesn't eliminate any child labor law.
Sure.
Federal law clearly dictates all,
hours they're allowed to work.
How many hours a day,
days, yeah.
all of that. Nothing changes with that one bit. And the school board or their school guidance counselor doesn't monitor any of that. Mm-hmm. So those would all still be audited by Department of Labor and wouldn't change any actual work requirement for a student. It just would get rid of the permit process.
Now tomorrow morning is the Jasper Chamber of Commerce legislative breakfast at the CTIM building on the campus of Vincennes University, Jasper.
Yep.
And you will be one of the presenters or legislators who will be there?
We should have all four of our area representatives there. Okay. Myself, Senator Houchin, Representative Bartels and Lindauer should all be there. So look forward to people coming out, hearing what's going on. We'll talk about some of our bills and bills that have been, things that have been moving in the Senate. The House guys will do the same, and then be open for questions if there's issues out there that people have concerns about. Since we have 2 senators and 2 House members, we can try to be prepared to answer any questions on issues that folks have seen out there, or committee hearings that have happened, or just things you want to ask about.
Then it starts at 9 o'clock.
Ends
at 10:30.
10:30.
And I will say that whether you know what's happening in the legislature or not, or there's bills that you care about or not, it's interesting to go and listen to things that you say or things that are brought up that people just don't realize are happening in the House or the Senate. And so I encourage everybody to go it's no charge,
Right.
and everybody's welcome. It's kind of a neat thing that they do.
Yep. We'll look forward to having a good crowd, and if anybody has a concern or question about what we're doing, come on out.
All right. Well, Senator, thank you very much for
You're
coming
welcome.
in again.
My pleasure.
We will see you next week to talk about some of the interesting things that happen next week in the legislature. Our guest has been District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer, representing you. Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.